Question 28 is another key question about your business's independence. Specifically, do you have a management team underneath you to run your company, or are you the management team? As it's somewhere in between. Choose the option that best fits what you currently have in place for your business. For my example, it's a flat sales business, and each desk is almost an independent business in of itself. The desk heads were responsible for building and strengthening the client relationships and bringing in the revenues. So I selected managers in charge of sales, marketing, and producing our services and products. Question 29. What's your profit margin before tax in your most recent completed financial year? That's pretty straightforward. I mean, it will ask you to look at your salary and expenses that go through the business and to adjust this net margin if they are more than what you could hire someone else to do. So if you're flying a private jet, if you're renting or leasing your car, your personal car through your business, you might want to take those costs out and adjust your net margin to see what it would be if those expenses weren't included. In my example, I assume that we're going to have about 11 to 20%. It's a commission business, so the owners don't really take a lot in terms of excess compensation. So let's go ahead and put 11, 20% there for us. The next question is your annual revenues. Now, in my example here, I chose that the financial brokerage company was located in the UAE. So it's going to ask about the revenue in dirhams. But depending on where your company is located and which country you selected when you started the questionnaire, this will come out in the currency of your country. One thing I would suggest on a personal level, if you have the numbers of the 12 trailing months, I would go with that. If you do not have that, then just go ahead by your last reported financial year. In our financial brokerage example, I'm assuming we don't have the 12 trailing months. So I'm going to just use the last financial year, and I'm going to choose 20 million dirhams plus as the annual revenue. 31 is asking to compare your most recent financial year with the previous year. Again, if you're using 12 trailing months, then compare your last 12 months with the 12 months prior to that. Otherwise, last year's financial year compared to the previous year financial year. And this takes into account also COVID. Again, I wouldn't adjust for COVID and what happened with COVID. So in this example, I put that my revenues decreased because of COVID. But like the growth question earlier, it is better to report exactly what happened instead of trying to normalize. Question 32 asks you about your approach to accounting and financial record keeping. This is an important variable that will later come into the estimate of the value of the business. In my example, this financial brokerage company is a regulated financial entity, and so they were required to have fully audited financial statements every single year. So I'm going to select we hire an accounting firm to produce audited statements each year. But choose the one that is most relevant or that is the most realistic picture of how you do your financial statements now. Next question, 33, is asking about the gross profit margin. So calculated per the instructions in the question. And in the question, they're really using cost of sales. So they're asking you to account for your cost of goods sold, for the cost of goods sold and the direct labor costs. So what I'm doing for my business example is I'm assuming the brokers were anywhere in the 40 to 50% direct commissions with direct system costs and everything. We would have turned out to have a gross margin of anywhere between 40 to 60%. Obviously, answer that per the one that's closest to your business. The 34th question is pretty much getting at your working capital gap. In other words, are you taking in cash faster than spending it or the other way around? If you are spending cash faster than you are collecting it, then you might face the stress of having to tap into lines of credit or loans to make payroll and monthly expenses. So think of your situation and see which of the choices most closely resembles your situation. In my example, I'm going to claim that we had excess cash, but that we were investing it in the business and to keep our balances liquid for when the markets were slow. So I selected the rainy day fund option. 35th question is kind of self-explanatory. It's pretty much asking, what you're doing on social media, how many followers you're attracting, so on and so forth. Um, so if this is relevant to you, go ahead and put that down. If you're not doing any social media, just go ahead and put none. We weren't doing any social media as a financial brokerage company. We our only clients were the banks. It was a very kind of unique niche market. Uh, there was no reason to be on Facebook or anything like that, so I'm going to put none. But of course, take a look at your business, see what you want to do here. Question 36 is just asking for your pre-tax profits or loss over the last 3 years. In the UAE, it could be, pretty much your, taxes not much. Taxes are not a big factor, but just put what, maybe use what would be considered EBITDA. Um, so for this example, I made up some numbers just for illustration purposes. These are not, from anyone that uh, either I worked for or anything like that. I'm just putting these numbers to make it easy math. So I'm going to say last year's pre-tax profit was 1 million. I'd say the pre-tax profit 2 years ago was 2 million, and 3 years ago was 1.5 million. Again, that's shown that last year you had a COVID effect. That's what hit profits. The company is growing, had COVID, fell, but now we're going to assume that it's going to grow in the future. But for now, let's just put these in.